Hey guys, welcome to our show today. My name is Alex Jacovides, the owner of Rise Autosport, and I'm super excited for our guest today because he's one of the most inspirational people I've ever come across. So inspirational that they've actually made a documentary film about him because he is the fastest blind man to ever ride a motorcycle. His name is Ben Felten, and in 2018, he set a new world record of 266.716 kilometers per hour on a motorbike, completely blind. So yeah, I'd like to welcome you to the show, Ben. How are you doing?
Hi, Alex. I'm really well. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for your time today, jumping on the call with us. I think a good place to start is just to get a bit of a better understanding of how you got to this point, because riding 270 odd k's an hour on a motorbike is something that most people can't do, even if they can see where they're going. And so I'd like to understand, yeah, how you got to this point. Have you been riding motorbikes your whole life, or yeah, just tell us a little bit more.
Sure, Alex. I can say riding a motorcycle at 270 or nearly 300 kilometers an hour is quite exhilarating, especially as a blind person. Um, Alex, I actually rode my first motorbike or mini bike when I was 6 years old at a friend's birthday party. And the first time I rode a bike, I just loved it. And I had a bit of a knack for it. So from there, I ended up getting my first motorbike. I owned my first motorbike when I was 12, and I grew up in the Blue Mountains, and so I rode the motorbike out a lot of fire trails. When I was about 15 to 16, I got into motocross racing, competitive motocross racing. I got my motorcycle rider's license on the day I was old enough,
Yeah.
16, 9 months old. Um, and then I got into a bit of enduro racing, and then probably in when I was about 19, I got into a little bit of road racing, uh, 250s and 350 Yamaha RDs. Yeah, so and then the last motorbike I purchased, I used to have a Suzuki GSX 1100 Katana. Um, and back in the day, back in the late 90s, late 80s, early 90s, it was a real weapon. And I actually had a drag racing record. I used to have the fastest street production motorcycle down the quarter mile here in New South Wales for a number of years. So I've always been a motorsport enthusiast. And what happened, how I actually went blind was I had a motorcycle accident when I was 16, hit a tree, I had concussion. And so I had a headache, and my mum took me to the doctor. And the doctor looked into my eyes just to check for any signs of concussion. And he noticed some pigment in my eyes. And so he referred me to the Sydney Eye Hospital. And after a number of tests, I diagnosed with a degenerative eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which is a genetic condition. It actually wasn't caused by the bike accident, but it was identified after that accident. And I was told at the age of 16 that I was going to go blind. They couldn't tell me how long it would take, but eventually I'll go totally blind. And so that was devastating news as a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
I continued to ride and drive because my sight was perfect. But then in my early 20s, my eyes sight started to deteriorate from the outside in. And eventually it just closed in. And my left eye, one day I woke up and I was blind in my left eye at 30, yeah, in my very early 30s, and in my mid 30s, my right eye eventually faded out. So, Alex, right now, I actually have no sight at all. I don't even have light perception. So I'm black in both eyes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but the passion for motorcycle racing or motorsport has always been there, Alex. Hmm.
Yeah, and it sounds like you obviously had the skill to take it further. Um, can I just ask, in terms of getting that diagnosis at 16, but not knowing exactly when you would lose your sight, but knowing it was an eventuality that was going to come. How do you deal with that? Because just looking from the outside, that would be such a difficult thing to deal with, just not knowing when you would lose your sight.
It was at the time, Alex, as you alluded to. Once I received the diagnosis from the doctors, I was absolutely devastated, and so was my family. And for a couple of weeks, I was um, just really sad because Alex, I just passed the entrance exam to join the Australian Navy, and I wanted to become a mechanical engineer, a marine engineer in the Navy. And I passed the entrance exam, and I just got a letter to say that you've been accepted, you've passed the entrance exam. Now we'd like to invite you to do a full medical and a psychological assessment. And based on that, then I was going to be a cadet in the Australian Navy. And so I just got that letter about about a month before I got the diagnosis. And so my hopes and aspirations to be an engineer in the Navy had been dashed. But when I first got the diagnosis, for about 2 weeks, I was just devastated, beside myself. Um, and the only way that I coped at that time, Alex, was I decided it was just too much for me to deal with at the time. And my eyesight was still perfect. So what I basically did was I just buried that diagnosis and didn't want to think about it. Pretty much like a lot of people do, is they stick their head in the sand and just pretend it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And which worked for quite some time until, as I said, my early 20s. I gave up riding and driving when I was 24, just before my 25th birthday. And again, at this point, as my eyesight started deteriorating, reality had set in again. And when I decided to give up riding and driving, as my eyesight was, I pretty much had about 140 degrees of vision, but I was starting to lose my periphery. Once I decided to give up riding and driving, Alex, then reality really hit me hard. And I lost my job. I lost my relationship. I couldn't drive anymore, so I lost my job, and that impacted. And I wasn't coping well at all. In fact, Alex, I pretty much became quite depressed. I became frustrated because I was starting to suffer night blindness. And I just thought all my hopes and aspirations had vanished. And so I really struggled for quite a few years. And, frustration led to anger, and I became quite depressed. And so I went out to seek support through organisations like Vision Australia, and through their support, I learnt new skills and basically undertook some counselling and coming to terms with being blind and learning how to be a blind person. But the challenge then, Alex, was, as you said earlier, it was a gradual deterioration, and I had no idea when I was going to go blind. So you can imagine, in the back of my mind, I became more and more reclusive, and I didn't go out because I was just frightened. One day I could suddenly go blind, and so I was really fearful of that. Yeah, so I eventually, being a totally blind person now, it's quite amazing. But it's amazing how people can adapt and get used to a change of lifestyle, and you develop new skills. And I have a seeing eye dog and a cane and a computer and voiceover and technology, and I actually live now, Alex, as a totally blind person. I'm really comfortable in my own skin. I'm proud of who I am. Being blind is a part of me, my character, and it's who I am. So, took me a long time to come to terms with it, to work through it, and to accept it. And I think a big part of the healing process, Alex, is you have to get to a point where you have to accept it, right, and come to terms with it. And that was a really healing process for me. Yeah.
With that, Ben, I mean, I've had some health issues myself over the last few years, and what I found was the catalyst to moving past it and making change and moving forward was to do, as you just said, was to accept it and to not let it define who I am and hold me back any longer. Um, when you decided to move forward, was that a split moment decision, or was it gradual over time that came to your mind?
Great question, Alex. Great question. I remember the day very vividly. I was 27 years of age, and I was at a point, as you can understand, I was angry, I was depressed, I had no hope, no future. There was nothing positive in my life. And I just got to a point where I went, you know what? I'm not going to let this, I'm not going to let this eye condition or my blindness overwhelm me. And I realized then that the reason why I was so angry and so frustrated was because I just couldn't deal with this whole blind thing. And it was like a light switch moment. And what I decided to do was I thought, right, I identified why I was feeling this way, which is the blindness, which I hadn't faced for a very long time. So then I realized that I had to deal with it. And then what I was going to do was to use that frustration and that energy, or my rather than doing negative things, I decided I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to make the most out of it. I'm going to learn, and yeah, and it was just it was a decision.
Yeah.
And as soon as I made that decision, bang, that was the turning point or the new page in my life, and that's when I put all my energies into learning new skills. Yeah, and here we are. Alex, a lot of people, I've met a lot of people in my time who have had the same diagnosis, or a similar diagnosis of going blind, and some people can never come to terms with it. And it's really sad sometimes where people just can't get past that point. And it's really sad. But for me, it was that light switch moment of accepting it. I'm going to deal with this, and I'm going to make the most of my opportunities. And Alex, I didn't. Once I made that decision, it's like when you decide to have the courage and open the door, face your adversity. And I decided to open that door and walk through that door and start a new life.
Yeah.
And it was literally like the second part of my life. Then the blind guy. Yeah.
Do you think?
And I never looked back since.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll touch on that definitely. What you've been up to the last few years, but I just wanted to go back to that. Do you think your decision to move past it and to make the most of the situation, do you think that is a part of who you are? Have you always been that type of person, or did it just come to a point where you had no other choice, so you just had to move forward?
Yeah, look, it's a bit of both. Logic and reality says, you've got this diagnosis and it's, inevitable. But I just couldn't accept that. But once I'd accepted that, and that was the time for me to move forward. But that's not to say it was an easy road, Alex. It was quite a few years were extremely difficult and challenging for me. But I think that, like most life experiences, Alex, you can look at things two different ways, right? So you can either, for instance, on your journey of life, everybody will sometimes either hit a stumbling block or a stepping stone. The difference is your attitude.
Yeah.
So a barrier, you might think, it's a stumbling block. But really, I see it as a stepping stone. And when you have a positive mindset, then it's a matter of finding the solution. And that's one of the really exciting things about my life, that I've been doing lots of things and learning new skills and solutions. And look, I've got a unique life story,
Yeah.
and it's given me an amazing quality of life. And I've had amazing opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that kind of answers your question, Alex.
Yeah, it does. And like you said, the opportunities and the experiences that have come out of this situation, uh, they're incredible. And I wanted to find out. So you said you stopped riding bikes at 24, was it?
Sorry, what was it again?
You stopped riding motorbikes at 24.
Yeah, 24 and about 10 months. So just before my 25th birthday.
Okay. And then a few years ago, you set a new record. So when did you decide to jump back on a motorbike, and what was the thought process there?
Well, oh, okay. So, Alex, I've always been involved in sport when I could see, and then when I started to go blind, I got involved in blind sport. And I had the honour and privilege to represent Australia in the sport of rowing. And I was in the Australian para rowing team for about 10 years. And Alex, I competed at 3 World Rowing Championships, and I was fortunate enough to win 3 world titles. So 3-time world rowing champion. At 37, when I retired from rowing, I tried out for the Australian blind cricket team.
Okay.
And I was in the Australian blind cricket team for about 8 years. So I played in the first ever blind cricket Ashes series in England, and I played cricket at Lords. I played cricket at a World Cup in Pakistan. Cricket's taken me, and rowing have taken me all over the world. And when I was in, before I retired from cricket, my last tour at the Australian team was a tour of the West Indies.
Okay.
And so I realised, and I was about 40, 45 years old, Alex, then, and I realised at the end of that tour that I didn't have the speed and agility I once had, and I certainly wasn't recovering, and healing is recovering as quick. So I realised that it was time for me to make some decisions in my life. So picture this, Alex. We're on the island of Barbados, small island in the Caribbean. And after the tour, I bought myself a bottle of rum and guava juice, and I walked down to the beach and I sat under a coconut palm, right? Just listening to the water lapping, and beautiful evening, and sitting there by myself, contemplating my future. And the first thing I decided that I was going to retire from blind cricket gracefully before I got pushed. So I made that decision that I was going to retire from blind cricket, the Australian blind cricket team. And then the next thing was, well, what's going to be my next sporting goal? Because I've always been a goal-orientated kind of person, Alex. And so I sort of thought, oh, well, I've done the rowing thing, and I've done a bit of sailing, and I'm thinking, Ben, what was my childhood dream? And I remember sitting back and I thought my childhood dream was to race motorcycles at the highest level. And I went, well, Ben, you're blind, and how can you ever ride a motorbike, you idiot? And after a couple more rum and guava juices, Alex, I convinced myself that I knew I could ride a motorbike, but the problem was I didn't know how can I find a navigation solution. So I started thinking about it, and then I decided that's it. I'm going to try somehow to ride a motorcycle again as a totally blind person. So the first thing when I got home from the West Indies, the first thing I did was I Googled blind land speed record or blind motorcycle record, and I discovered that there was a Guinness World Record for the fastest speed for a motorcycle ridden blindfolded. And there was a gentleman in the UK Billy Baxter, who had set a record in 2003 at 200 and what was his speed? 265 k's an hour, I think it was. And that was it. I was a man on a mission.
That's incredible.
So I had a goal to shoot for.
And what was it like jumping on the bike for the first time?
So I bought myself a brand new Suzuki Hayabusa, 1300cc, very fast motorcycle. We took it out to Eastern Creek Raceway, the Sydney Motorsport Park, and we hired the track, and we were on the main straight. And the boys had parked. I said, park the bike out in the middle of the circuit, and I'm going to go out there and hop on and ride it. And we discovered a navigation solution was analog radio, and I had a navigator. So I had this guy behind me on another motorcycle. I've got earplugs in. He's got a microphone. We're talking to each other, and so then my navigator was actually Kevin McGee, former MotoGP racer.
Yes, yeah.
And Magoo comes up to me and says, all right, Ben, he said, now, do you want me to go through all the controls and just give you a refresher of the bike? And I said, no, Kevin, I'm just going to get on and ride it. Alex, I hadn't ridden a motorbike for 25 years, all right? About 20 years.
Yeah.
25, I'm 45 the year, right? So I hadn't ridden a motorbike for 20 years. And I said to Magoo, no, I'm just going to jump on and let it just do it naturally. Hopped on, right up and up the circuit for about a K, spun around and came back. I did 3 laps. Yeah. And after the 3rd lap, I said to Magoo, I said, hey, mate, watch this. And on my 4th run, I went into 2nd gear, feathered the clutch, and just did a wheel stand all the way down the main straight of Eastern Creek.
So you were right at home straight away on the bike.
It's like it was like I rode a bike. It just straight away. You never lose it. Yeah. So I just hopped on, bang, and off I went. And so it was just natural for me.
So you went for the first run. You felt confident. You felt comfortable back on the bike. What was the next step from there to go for the world record?
So of course, to take on such a huge challenge, you need to have a team of people. So I was introduced to a guy called Paul Simpson, and Paul had his own communications company. He was a communications technician. So Paul used to provide all of the UHF radios, analog radios for all the racetracks around New South Wales. So I got introduced to Paul, and because I needed the navigation solution. And so Paul came on board as our communications technician. And then the other thing I needed was I needed to have a highly qualified, skilled navigator. And again, through networks and contacts, I got introduced to Kevin McGee, former MotoGP racer and Fox Sport commentator.
Yes.
And Magoo and Paul were kind enough to come on board to help me achieve my childhood dream to become to race motorcycles. So the 3 of us got together with the support of other people, of course, my brother, family, other people. And we did our first land speed record attempt, Alex, on the 25th of October, 2014, on an airport runway. It's called Temora, down into a place called Temora, which is halfway between Sydney and Melbourne.
And just how long after your first time back on the bike, how long after was this attempt at Temora?
This was about, took me about 12 months to pull the whole project together.
Okay.
And in the meantime, we were doing some practice, every few weeks at either Sydney Motorsport Park and also Sydney Dragway. So, and when I say practice, both those tracks got concrete walls on either side, Alex. So, 120 k's maximum. And even on one practice session, I actually rubbed my boot against the concrete wall. So I got a little close. But anyway, and most of that practice really was about setting up the bike, making it comfortable, adjusting everything, and then also testing the radio. And Kevin and I had to invent our own communication techniques when it came to navigating. So it was a lot of practice between Kevin and I. And we really had to get to know each other, Alex, because, I'm a totally blind guy. I'm relying on I'm relying on Kevin. And I have to put my trust, my life in his hands. And from Kevin's perspective, he has to accept responsibility for navigating me. And so he's actually riding two motorbikes at once. So building trust between the both of us was a critical part. So it took us about 12 months to put the project together. And on the 25th of October, I attempted the record, unsuccessful record attempt at Temora. And unfortunately, it was 38 degrees Celsius, Alex. It was stinking hot. It was windy. I had side winds, and it was under a lot of pressure. And I did 4 runs. And on my 4th run coming back down the runway is 2.2 kilometers long. I got hit by a gust of wind off the side of the runway into the gravel, completely out of control. 220 kilometers an hour I was doing. Amazing GoPro footage, I've got to say. Dodged a few landing lights and a couple of other obstacles, parked car, and I stopped 900 meters from where I went off the runway, about a meter away from barbed wire fence. And I kind of realized that, hey, this is enough excitement for one day. And
I'd say so.
And my poor old mother, my dear old mum, she's standing down there in the runway. So she sees me take off, and then off the side of the and a huge cloud of dirt. And she didn't know what happened. So we rode back and we called it a day, Alex. And we realized that airport runways are just too dangerous.
What happens? What goes through your head at that stage? Because you obviously realize you're not on the runway anymore. You don't know what you're riding towards. Is it just do you have your emotions under control, or is it just pure fear at that point?
That's another really interesting question. So definitely you can't allow your emotions. So this is a big part of our preparation. So in our team, everyone, we have a briefing session. So every time we ride, we have a briefing session, discussion with the whole team and all the, supporters, officials, whatever, and so forth. So we know exactly what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. And then what I do then, Alex, is prior to me going for a ride, I'd like a nice quiet place where I try to relax as much as I can. And all I'm doing is I'm thinking about the plan, right? What I'm going to do, what Kevin's going to do, when, how fast, where, all that sort of stuff. So I'm constantly going over the plan in my mind, and I'm trying to stay as calm and relaxed as possible. Then what I like to do when I go for a run is I walk out to the bike. I don't like to be distracted or talk to anyone because I'm really focused, right? I have to really get my mind completely focused on the job. And when I hop on the motorbike and start the bike up, all I'm doing then is thinking about executing the plan. You cannot have any emotions. You don't have time, right? You can't allow fear and other things to get in the way because you won't be able to do it. So when I'm on the bike, I'm totally thinking, all I'm concentrating on is executing the plan to perfection. And I'm obviously listening to Kevin McGee's navigational commands. And my job is to respond instantaneously to Kevin's communication demands. So that's what's going through my mind. When I'm riding the bike, there's no time for fear or any emotional response at all. And when I finish a run, Alex, I've got to say, and I pop up the visor and I'm slowing down, then I know I've executed the plan, I've achieved what I wanted to do, and it's then I just get overwhelmed with adrenaline and excitement, and it's the most awe-inspiring adrenaline rush of all time. So then I kind of get overwhelmed with the whole emotional response.
So yeah, so leading up to you're almost robotic about it. Um, I guess you have to be, like you said, you've got to be so focused because you're listening to what Kevin's telling you, which way to lean and stay on track. Um, when we watched your documentary film a few months ago in Sydney at the premiere, there was one clip of some GoPro footage on the bike when you were setting the record. And for me, as a track racer, normally, the longest straight on a track, you might be flat out for 10, 15 seconds at the most before you start braking. What filled me with anxiety, if I'm honest, was that you were flat out for so long. It just felt like you didn't back off. How long are you full speed for on those runs?
Yeah. So um, one of the things that Kevin McGee taught me, and I had good riding skills. I was a very talented motorcycle racer, and I won a lot of races. So I was confident in my skill set.
Yeah.
But what Kevin McGee taught me as being an ex-MotoGP racer is the ability to focus,
Yeah.
Alex. And I thought I was pretty good at focusing, but Kevin is exceptional. And when you have the opportunity to work with someone like Kevin McGee and a MotoGP racer, these guys are absolute professionals, and their ability to focus on the task at hand is absolutely incredible. And so Kevin has taught me so many skills, particularly about focus and about the importance of planning, and communication. So that's been a huge learning experience for me. When we're racing the bikes, Alex, we compete annually at an event called Speed Week on the salt flats in outback South Australia, the Salt Lakes, Lake Gairdner, which is pretty much 500 k's north of Adelaide. And it's out in the desert, and we're on this huge salt pan. And I raced there, or went there for the first time in 2016. And the track there is about 10 k's long. In fact, when we went for the world record, the track was 20 kilometers long.
Wow.
And Kevin and I decided to use about 7 kilometers of that track, 7 or 8 k's of that track. By the time we accelerate, and being on salt, you can imagine, Alex, salt's really fast because there's very low resistance, right? It's very, so you don't get a lot of drag. So problem with that is, it's coefficient, but there's no traction.
Right.
So you've got to gradually accelerate. Otherwise you get a lot of wheel spin and fishtailing. And so we'll get up to speed. It'll probably take us about, usually about 2 k's to get up to our speed. And then we pretty much hold, I've got the throttle flat out to the stops for about 5 kilometers, Alex. Yeah. So, that's like 3 minutes of 2 minutes. Actually, I haven't even timed it, but to hold the throttle in top gear wide open and going for it it's right out there, mate. It's right out there, Alex.
So is that the feeling you get from that? Is that what pushes you to go out there and do these incredible things?
Wow. It's the challenge. Yeah. It's about me personally. It's about the challenge of doing it. So for me, that's an important part of it. It's the passion and enthusiastic. I just love, for a blind person to be able to ride motorbikes again and race. And I would compete in overclass competition, Alex, at Speed Week in the 1000cc category against fully sighted guys. And I'm very competitive.
Yeah.
And I'm just that is so good for my self-esteem and my confidence. You know what? I'm a totally blind guy, and I've got a first blind guy in the world to have an Australian motorcycle racing license. I've got an international motorcycle racing license. And you know what? I compete in sport, something I never thought I could ever do, Alex. You know, for me, it is just so personally rewarding to be able to pursue my passion and get out there and be a so-called normal guy riding motorbikes. And so for me, it's immensely rewarding. It's great for my confidence and self-esteem. I love the challenge. I love working in teams that, and I love to, and Kevin's like this, and so is Paul. We both aspire to perform at the highest level that we possibly can. And so that's what motivates us to do it. Of course, Alex, getting a record, that's the bonus. Yeah. So I'm really out there just loving to ride and to race and being competitive. And for a blind guy to be able to do that, mate, I'm the happiest guy in the whole world. I never thought I could do it, let alone everybody else. But I'm out there doing it. I'm living an awesome life. And at the same time, Alex, I have the opportunity to inspire and to motivate other people. So that's why I want to get out there and do what I do. I want to, I've done a few TV documentaries, and we've made a film documentary, and because I want to share my story. I think it's really important that other people see, well, blind guy who has a passion and a desire and a will can pursue their dreams and achieve extraordinary things. And if I can share my story and inspire somebody, especially someone who is dealing with, a challenging traumatic situation or a recent diagnosis or a health issue or whatever it might be, to be able to inspire people and to give them hope about the future, and also to show people that, living blind is still a great lifestyle. You can still have a great life. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I was going to ask for you in terms of being an inspiration to others, because you are, and you've got tens of thousands of followers. People look up to you, and you get messages every day saying how much of an inspiration you are. I wanted to find out, in terms of being an inspiration with your disability, do you want to be known as, do you want people to look up to you because you have a disability and you can go out and do these things? Or, I mean, what you're doing is incredible even without the disability, if that makes sense.
Yes. I don't see myself, this is weird, but I don't see myself as a person with a disability. All right. I'm just a normal guy who can't see.
Yeah.
So my mindset is I don't let my disability define me. All right. So I'm Ben Felten, the blind motorcycle racer. And I think that's very important to because there is a stigma, right, around the word disability. And as soon as people use that word or define you as a disabled person, it's like you're inadequate, or you're dysfunctional, or you have disability. You don't have any abilities. And so for me, that's just a word. It's a tag. It's a bit of a label, and I'm not really into that. Labels and putting people in boxes, because I am who I am, and I'm just a normal guy out there, working, paying the bills, all the normal kind of things, and so I just happen to be a motorcycle racer that happens to be blind, and that's how I look at it. Alex, you mentioned earlier about being an inspirational role model. And yes, I do get emails and messages virtually every day, emails, and mate, from people all over the world.
Yeah.
And I have the most extraordinary stories, right? And it's absolute blessing that I can instill some positive in somebody's life. Alex, and sometimes some of the messages I get from people all over the world just really affect me immensely. Can I share one little story with you?
Yeah, definitely.
So I got an email from an 11-year-old boy in America,
Mm-hmm.
and he was in palliative care. He was dying of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of his heroes. He
Wow.
loved riding motorbikes, and he saw my story, and he wrote me an email, and he asked me if I could send him some blind speed stickers,
Yeah.
because what he wanted to do was to put it on his coffin.
Wow. Wow.
And he died several weeks later
Wow.
after he got that, And so, mate, that's sort of when you get messages. I got the most amazing personal life story messages, mate, and that's what really also motivates me.
Wow.
The word inspiration is just a word, but I didn't realize how much of an impact I have on people's lives. And Alex, just another little quick one.
Yeah.
But I gave out some posters to a whole bunch of school kids one day. One of the 10-year-old boy was totally blind, and his dad sent me a message through Facebook saying, "Hey Ben, my son has got your poster on his bedroom wall." And I just said to my wife, I said, "Hey, Karen, have a look at this." I said, I never thought that I'd be a role model for other people. I said, how cool is that? I'm very honored and very privileged, Alex. And that's really, you can't buy that sort of stuff, Alex. It's gold. Yeah.
I think even just your take um, on what it means to you, and in terms of putting people in boxes who are disabled, and how you don't see yourself that way. I think that message is incredibly powerful and inspirational in itself. Just that idea of how you think of yourself, because at the end of the day, what you said is 100% correct. You're just a motorcycle. You're a motorcycle rider who happens to not be able to see, and it doesn't define you. So I think that is such a powerful message for people who are going through things, that they don't have to let what other people think, what society might think. They don't have to let that define who they are and what they can achieve. Um, and I'll use that as a segue, because this year, 2023, you're looking to achieve even more. And yeah, do you want to tell us what you're up to this year? Because you're going to be going faster and doing it a little bit differently.
Yeah. Well, I've got some awesome news. And Alex, just I just want to, before I answer that question,
Yeah.
And you were at the premiere private screening of Dark Rider, the film documentary made by Serendipity Films of Belgium, and at that event we had the CEO of Motorcycling New South Wales there, and he made a special announcement, and they're going to start an inclusive motorcycle riding program for people with a disability. So my inspiration is now, and there's also last year in Queensland, Motorcycling Queensland has been running a trial program for 12 months, and it's called the Riding Blind Project.
Right.
So about 30 people in Queensland have been riding 2 or 3 days a week at a motocross track.
Fantastic.
Up in Queensland. So, Alex, I'm out there doing my thing. I've inspired people, and now through what I've done and through our messaging, that other people believe, oh, wow, blind people can ride a motorbike, or people that just really can do a bike if you have some modifications and so forth. And so we've inspired motorcycle riding programs in Australia. So other people with a disability are now benefiting from the pathway that I've led. Now, I'm so proud of those sort of things. But the new challenge and the special announcement is, Alex, that the Blind Speed team are going to challenge the Guinness World Record for the fastest speed for a car driven blindfolded. That's a technical word. So I am the world's fastest blind man on a motorcycle, and I want to challenge Dan Parker, an American blind guy, who in March last year set the new car land speed record at a blistering 339 kilometers per hour.
It's fast.
And so we're going to America
Yes.
this year, hopefully in October. In fact, we're going to go to Cape Canaveral, the world's longest, widest runway, the space shuttle landing facility. And we're going to challenge Dan Parker's record, 339 kilometers an hour, in a car owned by Michael Bream, of EV West in California. And EV West have built an electric land speed race car, Alex. And there might be some images that people can have a look at. But basically, it's a torpedo with a Tesla engine in it. Yes. And the car holds its own class record at 383 kilometers per hour. Cool. Michael Bream tells me the car is theoretically capable of 480 kilometers an hour. And so we're teaming up with EV West.
Yes.
Blind Speed and EV West are going to challenge the world blind car land speed record later this year.
That's fantastic. So I think it works quite well that you're going to be doing it at the Kennedy Space Center, because you're going to be driving a rocket, essentially, an electric rocket.
Electric rocket. Yeah. How awesome is that? Hey. Now, here you go, Alex. When I was diagnosed at 16 with my degenerative eye condition, I thought my career prospects were going to weave cane baskets and thread beans. You know, and if I was really lucky, I might become a switchboard operator. Yeah, I'm showing you a bit about my age here. Who would ever thought in my wildest dreams that I would be invited to drive one of the world's fastest electric cars at Cape Canaveral in America to go for a world record? Who could have imagined that in their wildest dreams, Alex?
It's incredible. I'm getting goosebumps. It really is. It really is something,
isn't it? And by making that decision that day when I was 27, that I was gonna deal with this. I was going to embrace who I am, all aspects of me I wanted to learn, and I was going to. And now I guess by being blind has given me so many more opportunities that I would probably have never had, Alex, if I was fully sighted.
Yep. Yeah, and I would like to come back to that. I just briefly wanted to talk about this record in America that you're going for, because when the announcement came through, it started a bit of a friendly, competitive rivalry between Dan Parker, who currently holds the record and who is very interested in internal combustion engines. And here you are, an Aussie, coming there with an electric vehicle, trying to take over his record. So I think a few sparks have started to fly. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, we're competitive. We're going to challenge Dan's record, and we plan to come away with a new land speed record. I know that Dan is not very happy about that. And Dan's an amazing guy himself. I mean, he was NRHA World Drag Racing Champion, I believe, in 2005. Wow. So, and then he had a race car accident, and that's what sent him blind. And here we are competing against each other. How cool is that? That Dan Parker there's another. One of my mentors is a gentleman by the name of Mike Newman. Mike is based in England, and Mike held the motorcycle record about 20 years ago. And Mike has, I think, 8 or 9 land speed records. He's the fastest blind guy in a truck, fastest man on water. He used to have the fastest record for the fastest car.
Okay.
And Dan recently beat that. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Mike Newman would be putting together another record attempt. But anyway, so that's the challenge. We've thrown it out there. And yes, we're going to compete. The blind guys are going to race against each other to finally determine who is the world's fastest blind man.
Fantastic. I mean, what a fantastic initiative, and like you said, it's inspiring others and showing other people, not just blind people or people dealing with adversity, but it's showing everyone that there's opportunities, and we can make the most of the time that we have here, yeah, and live an extraordinary life. So I think just one more question to wrap up, Ben, in terms of legacy. You're doing a lot of incredible things. What is it that you want people to remember you for? Is there anything in particular that stands out?
Wow. As a person who was able to overcome challenges and adversity, um, and if I can be an inspirational role model to people, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the other main thing, Alex, is that I want to develop positive cultural attitudes, right, around people with a disability. And I know there's a lot of stigma around that. And quite a bit of the controversy we stirred up in America is, how can a blind guy do that? It's risky and it's dangerous and it's not safe. And how is he going to navigate? And all these sort of challenges. So really, by me living my life and getting out there with a positive attitude, I really want to hopefully educate and influence people and develop positive cultural attitudes around people with a disability. Yeah.
Yeah. That's powerful. Yeah.
Just because you've got a disability doesn't stop you from living a life and working and doing extraordinary things. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you.
So, and Alex, I'm very passionate. I have a charity that I established called Insight of Dreams. So this is my other part of my legacy.
Yeah.
And the charity is to support people who've acquired a disability and help them through that traumatic period. So it's about, we provide mentoring support to individuals.
Okay.
We provide a mental health program through professional psychological counselling and support services. And it's really about, Inside of Dreams is about helping people with a disability come to terms with their circumstances and to help them think about the future and to develop resilience and develop life planning skills to help get people to see the future. And so that takes up a lot of my time. And again, that's one way that I can give back to. I want to help. I really want to provide support. Like when I was a 16-year-old, Alex, I was devastated, and there was very little support out there. And if I can help people through my charity who went through a similar life experience as me, then that's immensely rewarding.
It's always amazing speaking to you. I always get a bit choked up because, like I said, we've probably said it about 100 times, but you're an inspiration. And thank you so much.
My pleasure, Alex. Here we come, America.